Let's bring in our panel now to preview AMD's earnings due out after the close today. Greg Martin, co-founder and managing director at Rainmaker Securities, and Angelo Zino, who is the senior equity analyst at CFRA Research, joining me now. Thank you so much for your time, guys. Let's start with you, Greg. I mean, how high is the bar now for AMD, and can it clear it?
You know, it's a great question, and thank you for having me. You know, we watch this market very closely. You know, we focus on the private securities market, and obviously we're very closely watching the big, AI businesses that are still private. And AMD is clearly one of the bellwethers for this market. And obviously the recent announcements from the hyperscalers, Microsoft, Facebook, Amazon, and Google, talking about spending $300 billion going forward, to buy AI, to spend on AI is really going to drive growth in the leading chip infrastructure companies. Obviously, with Nvidia and AMD as the number 2 player, should benefit significantly from that. And so I'm really looking forward to hearing the guidance, on the tails of what we heard from the hyperscalers to see, how they feel about the growth potential. I assume it's going to be great. Obviously, the stock has responded extremely well this year. There's some headwinds, clearly, with some unknowns, tariff situations with China. That they obviously had the ban recently, on their AI GPU accelerator chips in China. So that's going to have an impact on Q2. That ban has been paused, but there's still some uncertainty around how tariffs are going to affect margins going forward. So there's really a lot to listen to today. And, it really gets into what the broader AI narrative will be going forward.
Right, so there's tariff, export controls, and also with regards to the capex story, no doubt the Microsofts and Metas of the world are setting the tone here and perhaps offering a bit of a tailwind. You could argue that it's a bit of a sort of yesterday story as far as the export controls, a bit backwards looking, because they have said that things are perhaps easing up there. But the big question mark is the tariffs. But Angelo, I want to get your thoughts certainly on this run up as far as the rally. I mean, the outperformer, even beating Nvidia. I mean, how much has it got to sort of justify what the street has been pricing in here today?
Yeah, so as far as the run-up we've seen from AMD, we actually think a big reason for the run-up is actually more of the fact that it's going to be a bigger 2026 story than it is, anything maybe specifically related to Q2 or Q3, because the prospects we think going into 2026 look so great, given that they are kind of shifting towards these more large-scale rackable systems. And I think the street is starting to warm up to all that and the revenue potential that you can get from that. The fact that they could potentially close that competitive gap. We just had a great AI event from AMD just back in June. And they had brought some great guests on in terms of developers that are really starting to leverage up, get familiar with AMD's new software platform. And as you kind of hit year 3 next year, again, we think that's going to be the real ramp in terms of their accelerator opportunity as far as their GPUs are concerned. But as far as Q2 earnings season, Q3, I think tonight's all going to be about China and what they have to say about China. And really, our view here is that they are now allowed to sell back into China, at least from our understanding. How quick can that ramp up here into Q3 and again into Q4? What do they have to say about that opportunity tied to China? Because to your point, maybe we know about that the hyperscaler story right now, the fact that you are getting higher spending from that perspective. And right now, you've got a forthcoming 232 a semiconductor investigation, which we're going to get details on probably over the next week or two. And that is going to be a headwind. And we are probably seeing some pull-ins from tariffs. But that China story, we think, is going to be really key this earnings season.
Yeah, it's fascinating that you say that, Angelo, because time and time again I ask analysts, how much of a headline risk is China, particularly for some of these companies. And, I do hear a lot of analysts sort of suggesting, well, not so much, sort of downplaying it. And then you get a headline like the chips are coming back and, you see many sort of jumping up and down and excited about the fact that, how beneficial that's going to be for the Nvidias and the AMDs of the world. But you seem to echo, Angelo, I want to stick with you for a second, what I heard the Bernstein analyst, Stacey Raskin, saying earlier, that the real story is next year with the MI450, and that's when it gets a little bit more competitive with Nvidia. And the way I heard it characterized this morning was that AMD really needs to prove that it's no longer the younger sibling and that it's not just playing second second fiddle to Nvidia. So for now, you can keep dreaming. But as you say, it's a bit of a 2026 story. But I mean, what's it got to show to really catch up here?
Yeah, and I actually think it's more than just a dream. Like I actually think this is something that we're going to actually start seeing real revenue, ramp up. I mean, none of these hyperscalers want to completely rely on Nvidia, right? I mean, Nvidia's the go-to company right now, and clearly the second go-to company would essentially be Broadcom with their own kind of custom silicon business. But if you're looking for maybe another alternative to GPUs, it would be AMD. And we do think kind of, at the very least, if you're a hyperscaler, you want to keep Nvidia honest in terms of their business, their pricing strategy, and everything like that. So you want to give AMD some business out there. You just need to make sure that they've got their story right. And we do think they've made a number of acquisitions here over the last 2 years. They are now ramping up their software platform. So we do now think they have all their eggs aligned. It's just a matter of executing at this point in time over the next 2 to 4 quarters before they fully ramp up that that rackable kind of solution. And again, I mean, we saw with Nvidia and their Blackwell platform that there were some hiccups along the way in terms of execution, but ultimately they got it right, and we're kind of seeing all the benefits from that perspective right now. But similar with AMD, we do think all the hard work's been done at this point in time, and at this point it's really all about execution. They've also got some new GPUs ramping up here in the second half of the year, and that is going to help in the near term in terms of the upside potential as far as their accelerator business is concerned.
Right, and Greg, just lastly, very quickly, I mean, as we look ahead to this earnings report, I mean, what has the group sort of told us so far? I mean, when you look at the onsemi's, the NXPIs of the world, because it seems that there's a bit of a view and an argument out there that we're seeing some bifurcation as far as the semis are concerned, particularly when you look at those sort of more auto industrial exposed names. And of course, we're yet to hear from Nvidia. But what are your thoughts? Is that a sort of fair way to characterize it?
Well, it is a technology arms race, and the leading technology company will win. But there is also going to be a lot of winners, and there will be some bifurcation as you point out. But it is important to have multiple suppliers. We don't just want to have an Nvidia take everything. The hyperscalers clearly want to keep them honest. So there is an opportunity for an AMD to come in with a product that either is equal or slightly better, or even slightly worse, and still gain significant market share and grow its business. I mean, this is a little bit of a rising tide. Is going to float a few boats here, and AMD just needs to keep up technologically with Nvidia, and there's going to be a very good outcome for that company or any company that comes into this space.
The pond is big enough for more than one fish, as I heard it called earlier. But guys, we have to leave it there. Greg Martin, Angelo, Zino, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.